My name is Liz Deschenes. I'm an artist.
I'm Phil Taylor, and I'm an associate curator in the Department of Photography at the George Eastman Museum.
My work going back to 2001 has investigated, photography's relationship to film. Each installation is composed of a particular number of large-scale vertical photograms that correspond to the number of frames per second in a historical frame rate.
How are the photograms made?
Photogram requires light-sensitive paper. It requires light being projected onto that paper. There's nothing on the surface when I'm making the photograms, but the surface itself changes over time and becomes actually a physical, three-dimensional object in space. So there's no object in making them, but they become objects themselves.
Can you speak to your interest in frame rates and what led you to begin the FPS rates works?
Some of the first proto-filmic endeavors were completely photographic. You can look at 18 Jules Murray, who's been a figure that I've looked at frequently in the work, and he devised an apparatus that could, going back to frames per second, could record 60 frames per second. When films are screened, they're screened at standard 24 frames per second, which means 24 frames go through the projector in a second. That's obviously standard. Previous to that standardization, there were a variety of frame rates, and this exhibition will be focusing on frame rates that existed in the silent era of film. Both in camera and in projection, it was hand cranked. So this whole idea of evenness or mechanization is upended by the body. Body obviously is going to produce different results with each screening.
Can you describe your response to the Potter Pair style and how that has informed the making of new works for the exhibition?
The works that bookend the rates works are based on color that was utilized before photography was invented, and filters that were used in the landscape by painters, and then more recently color that was used in Technicolor in film and dye transfer and photographic procedures. And probably the way most of us look at photographs these days is on our phone. So it's about looking, and it's also about filtering what would be in front of the camera.
None of the works in the exhibition were made with a camera, but maybe you can speak to how the works have a relationship to the camera and its role in photography and film.
I think that's a good starting point, because if we were talking about the photogram, we've removed the camera. I've thought of the exhibition sites as being stand-ins for the camera. Camera means room. So these rooms aren't darkened, but they have objects that activate the room and the architecture in all sorts of unpredictable ways.
I think there is this interesting balance between rupture and continuity in these works.
Yeah, and the architecture actually
performs that.
Yeah.
Right,
yeah.
Mandates it.
Mandates it with the breaks. I think my work embraces the material histories of photography through color and black and white that will hopefully register in looking at the objects that are on view in the 75th anniversary exhibition. That people will see a daguerreotype and think of its uniqueness and how it's changed over time, and how that's also embedded, in the surfaces of my photograms that will be on display. So there's an homage and there's a reverence, and there's also a desire to maybe, rethink how photography has been considered. Everything is always shifting and in flux, but in my work it's actually noticeable on the surface of the work.